The Chicago Bulls head coaching search is still ongoing, and a new name has entered the chat, and that is Coach Kevin Young, currently with BYU. Is he a dark horse candidate for the Chicago Bulls job? Then we're going to talk about the Chicago Bulls hosting Egbuka Okorie at Stanford for a workout. And then we talk about Karim Lopez, an international player, and if it's possible, if he could be a gem for the Chicago Bulls in the later rounds. Y'all know we're going to talk about it, break it all down, but you got to hear the music first.
Cognac, gang.
Shy Boys Podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down for today's daily episode. So if you're tuned in, like talking Bulls basketball, and ready to figure out who the next head coach gonna be and who we about to take in this draft, make sure you go ahead and support the channel as we're on our road to 10K. Hit that like button and subscribe. Simple two-step process, ladies and gentlemen. Don't freeload. Support the channel. We be getting busy over here. But nonetheless, let's talk about the content. Now, we're hearing that while there was a long list of candidates, and we heard that there were some confirmed interviews, and we saw head coaches come off of the Chicago Bulls list, like Sean Sweeney taking the Orlando Magic game. According to ESPN, Jamal Collier, the Bulls, who are casting a wide net, has now had some conversations with BYU head coach Kevin Young. He now enters the chat. Now, if you want to go back and just listen to and hear us review some of the other candidates in the past, go ahead and check those out. We dropped those on previous videos, and that comes down to Mike Nori, Dave Bliss, Tiago Splitter, so on and so forth. But now let's talk about Kevin Young, just to provide the context so you guys can know who you're really looking at. Is he has an extensive resume. It's really, really impressive. This guy has been around basketball pretty much his entire life. He was once a former basketball player that played in D2, got his coaching start at Oxford back in 2004, was a part of teams like the Utah Valley College, and then also was a coach overseas in Ireland for 1 year before he ultimately went into becoming a G League assistant with the Utah Flash, and then, worked his way around there as assistants with that G League team, ultimately became the head coach for that G League team. And then back in 2016, 2020, throughout 2016, all the way into 2020, he spent time under Brett Brown with the Philadelphia 76ers, to where they made the playoffs a couple of those years. So he has now some international experience, some G League experience, and some playoff experience under his belt. Once he departed from Philly in 2020, he joined Monty Williams' staff back in 2021 through 2024, where they had a lot of success down in Phoenix with playoff runs, so on and so forth. And over the last 2 seasons, for where we all know him from, he's the current head coach for BYU and just recently coached AJ DeBanter. So that's a really impressive resume, a guy that has international experience, like I said, G League experience, NBA experience, and head coaching experience. And it's really impressive because at BYU, his record over the last 2 seasons is 49-22. So it's definitely a guy that should be on this list. My thoughts are simple. You definitely want to cast a wide net, even considering some college coaches, but not only a guy that has that college experience, but has NBA experience and potentially knows the differences between the NCAA game and the NBA game. And I think that when you look at a guy who has this type of track record and is a former player, you take those things into account. Obviously, it's going to come down to how does the Bulls front office feel about him as a prospect. But nonetheless, I still say with a resume like this, it definitely holds up versus some of the other candidates. Obviously, we're still waiting on a quote unquote finalist list from the Chicago Bulls, but at the same time, I'm satisfied with the Chicago Bulls not panicking with the hiring of Sean Sweeney and sticking to their program. And I know that there's going to be some people who's like, damn, just because the way that you're going about this, you potentially missed out on Sean Sweeney. And that could be a fair analysis. But then at the same time, you can look at it and compare the Orlando Magic to the Chicago Bulls. And let's keep it a buck. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's keep it about a being, bada boom. The Orlando Magic are in a better position to contend than the Chicago Bulls, though the Chicago Bulls job is an enticing job due to the assets that you're going to have available to you in draft capital, due to the assets available to you in money wise. And now you're getting a new front office that appears to know what they're doing. And it's a young front office that can provide a freshness to this car that we call the Chicago Bulls that we can hopefully get going in the right direction. But there is something I mentioned with the resume of Kevin Young that has me really, really intrigued, and why I'm asking, can Kevin Young be a dark horse for the Chicago Bulls? That is his connection to Monty Williams. If we remember correctly, Bryson Graham mentions Monty Williams as a mentor and a close companion, or for a lack of a better word, in his introductory press conference when questioned about a number of things. He gives a lot of grace and shouts out a guy like Monty Williams. So if he leans on Monty Williams, I'm not saying that you absolutely should hand this job over to Kevin Young, but where there be some type of favor that he gives Kevin Young over the other candidates is something that we're going to have to watch out for, because how he views and respects a guy like Monty Williams. So it's definitely going to be something that's on my radar. It's definitely when you start to find and try to make connections on what the Chicago Bulls are trying to do from the outside looking in. It's one of those things to where I look at it and say, hey, maybe this could potentially be their guy. I hope that the front office, though, they make um a decision as a whole, as a unit. Ultimately, obviously, it's gonna come down to Bryson Graham. We already know that. But he did say, we gotta hold it to him, that if he's the smartest person in the room, that he's failed. So do you go out there and listen to some of your, people that surround you, your contemporaries, and make a decision, based on who everybody wants or who everybody feel is more capable? Or do you just listen and then make the decision that you feel is best? It's going to be interesting to see, man. It's definitely going to be interesting to see. The resume of Kevin Young is very, very impressive. I'm not going to cut him short on that. And that connection with Bryson Graham and Monty Williams, I believe, holds some weight. We'll see what happens with that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I just hope the Chicago Bulls get the best candidate so we can go ahead and move on and shift our focus completely to the NBA draft. But y'all let me know how y'all feeling about Kevin Young down below, man. How y'all feeling about the resume? Do you believe he can come in after, spending the last 2 seasons with the NCAA and lead the Chicago Bulls to where we need to be and where we want to go? Let me know down below. But hey, now we move on to some other news that are coming out, that the Bulls are set to work out guard Egbuka Okorie. And this young fella comes out of Stanford. He's a 6'2 guard. Last year with Stanford averaged 23 points, 3.6 assists, 3.6 rebounds, shooting 46% from the field and 35% from the three, and averaged a little under 2 steals at 1.6. I believe the kid has a lot of offensive talent. You know what I'm saying? I think that while he's slated towards the end of the second round, I think that kind of makes sense based on him being 6'2 and being a bit undersized and a little bit more leaner. I think that's kind of where you can possibly see it. Do I see the Chicago Bulls potentially taking him at 15? I'm not going to count the guy out because it's not my evaluation process, but I like the kid's offensive game. The offensive game, he can put it on the basketball floor. He has a nice handle. He can shoot the three well as he can shoot the three well. One of my questions is the playmaking ability. A guy that's 6'2", I'm not gonna totally count him out from his scoring ability, but as a guy, do you look at this young player and say, why do you only have 3.6 assists as a guard? You know what I'm saying? And a smaller guard at that. It's just a question that I have. Definitely see you can see a little bit of playmaking ability. Obviously, you want to see a little bit more in that department, but I'm not going to totally count the kid out. Maybe if he slips to the second round, we might be taking a flyer on him. I'm not going to count him out at 15, though, even though I like other prospects at 15 for me. Defensively, that's going to be another question I have about Egbuka. I got to see a little bit more on ball defense if I'm keeping it a buck. But one thing that I really like is that he's averaging close to 2 steals at this size. He plays the passing lanes pretty well, and he can help off the weak side and potentially get you some blocks. So I think he has some game that you could definitely work with. Is he first on my list? No, but I'm not going to count the young fella out with his scoring ability because you still need guys to put the ball in the basket on the NBA level to be successful. We'll see what happens with the workout. We'll see what the Chicago Bulls feel about him once the draft comes. Obviously, we're pretty much not going to leak anything unless he has a amazing workout probably. But right now, we're just going to say good luck on your workout. We'll see what happens during draft time. Now, the last topic I want to talk about is Karim Lopez. This is an international player, and could he potentially be a late round / second round pick for the Chicago Bulls? Bleacher Report believes that the Chicago Bulls could potentially take a flyer on Lopez here and make some noise with him. This is a big guy, I believe 6'7", 6'8", over 222 pounds or something like that. Pretty much is a Mexican-born player who played overseas his last 3 seasons of playing basketball. The last 2 seasons, he spent his time in New Zealand with the NBL, and then last season, he played 25 minutes a game, and he averaged 11 points, 6 rebounds, 1 block, shooting 50% from the field and 32% from the three. I think that the kid, again, comes in with some size that could be necessary for the Chicago Bulls. He comes in with an NBA ready body, in my personal opinion, at 6'7", 6'8". And I think that you look at him and you say, hey, the offense, I think he got some offensive game. I think he can rebound well. I think on a defensive side, he can hold his own. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how the Chicago Bulls feel about him. Do you want to go out there and take him at 15 like Bleacher Report is suggesting? I'm not going to say that. Will you want to pretty much hold off into that second round, potentially get him into your G League program, develop him a little bit more on both sides of the ball, and then we'll go on from there. However, I still think that Lopez is one of those guys. I like the offensive game. He's coming with some athletic ability as well. He can go. One thing that I liked about him when watching him is that he had a counter to when guys cut him off with that right hand. When he was getting cut off with that right hand, he was able to counter and go with the left hand and finish. And then at the same time, he was able to go out there defensively and put up some resistance against those people that were driving on him and get blocks out of that defensive stance that he was putting up against opposing teams. So I think that I don't like counting. I don't like if y'all notice, I don't like crapping on young players coming into the draft because a lot of the stuff, sometimes we just don't know how a player is going to shape out into the NBA. So I'm going to say the same thing I said about Egbuka, about Lopez. I like some things. I believe there's some things he can work on. You know what I mean? And we'll see how the Chicago Bulls feel about him once the draft roll around. I'm not one of those guys that's going to say, no, he's absolutely trash. No, I'm not going to do that. I think he has some things that you can work with. A lot of people, when you go and research some of the thoughts from the analysts, they believe he's more on the rawer side as a talent. And that's fine too. He's only 19 years old, ladies and gentlemen. So he has time to grow into a man. and develop his game a lot more. So I ain't gonna count him out. I do like some things for him. We'll see what happens once the draft rolls around. But hey, that is it for me today, y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode of Shy Boys Podcast. Before y'all get up out of here, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and support the channel on our road to 10K. It's a two-step process. I'm pretty sure y'all good with the two-step. At least most of us know how to two-step. But this is the easiest two-step you can do. Like button, subscribe, man. Help us on that road to 10K. But hey, that is it for me. I appreciate y'all. Make sure you always see red. And y'all already know we gonna catch y'all on the next one for sure. Peace.
Cognac. Gang.